The GBI show right here on QLTV. That, of course, stands for Gridiron Betting Insights. What's happening? It's your host, Jay Sanin. Excited for you to be joining us here on a Tuesday or whenever you catch the show on demand as we look back on the week that was week 4 in the NFL, a wild week that it was both on and off the field. We will look back at everything that you need to look back at and think about heading into next week in the National Football League. We'll, of course, start with our weekly segment, the extremely creatively named What Have We Learned? Where we talk about what have we learned in the past week in the NFL. We'll also look back at my picks from week 4 in a segment called Upon Further Review, where I poke some fun at myself, I pat myself on the back, and of course, at the end of the day, I hope that the back pats outweigh the self-flagellation. In this case, it didn't because we went 2-2-1, so we're going to break even on the back pats and the self-roasts. And that's okay. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. We'll also get you some updated odds on the futures market in the NFL. We'll talk odds to win the Super Bowl, odds to win the divisions, look at a couple of key individual awards in the NFL as well. And of course, if you behave yourself, if you play your cards right, and stay tuned to the end of the show, I do have one early selection for week 5 here on the GBI show. Of course, GBI show brought to you by BetQL. Use betql.co for all your NFL betting informational needs. Use promo code SANIN at the bottom of your screen, SANIN, for 20% off all subscriptions at BetQL. Of course, you can chime in during the show, whether you're on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, whatever the case may be. Use the chat function, drop me a line, let me know what you're thinking throughout the show. And if I am amused, I will interact with you live here on the program. So let's start by talking about what we learned in week 4 of the NFL in a segment that I like to call, What Have We Learned? First thing we learned last week in the NFL, please, and I'm just going to keep saying it every week, please do not lay big money lines in the National Football League. Just don't do it. It's not a good investment long term. It is not the way to manage your money betting the NFL. Why do I say that? Because this week you have the LA Rams somewhere in the neighborhood of a minus 1250, minus 1300 money line favorite in a one possession game with a New York Giants team that has not yet proven it knows how to play the game of football at a professional level. Rams win by 8. That's great. But you sweated it out the entire time on the money line if that's what you chose to do with your money for not a lot of payoff. You would have had to have risked $1,300 just to make $100. Some bettors can afford to do that. Some can't. Whether you can or can't, not a good investment with your money. We also saw the Kansas City Chiefs as a double-digit favorite last night against the New England Patriots team that had to travel to Kansas City the day of the game because of the COVID situation surrounding Cam Newton. And that was a close game into the second half, if not for a late pick 6 where Julian Edelman drops the ball conveniently right into the breadbasket of Tyrann Mathieu. You're looking at potentially a one-score game if the Patriots were able to go down the field and even kick a field goal. At some point in that game, they had so many chances to get points in Chiefs territory and couldn't take advantage in the first half. Had they taken advantage of any of those opportunities and that pick 6 doesn't happen, you're sweating out a one-score game late. Not the way you want to be spending your money at that kind of price. Again, there's no such thing as a sure thing in the NFL. Laying big money lines, typically a recipe for disaster, unless, of course, your Fox Sports is Clay Travis, where you, and I say this without a shred of exaggeration, you wear a crown on a sports gambling show and tell everyone to take the Chiefs money line. I'm certainly not as high profile as Clay Travis. I will leave it at that. But he's not the smartest guy when it comes to sports gambling. That has been well documented over many years. Do not listen to advice like that about taking big money lines. Listen to me when I tell you, please do not lay huge money lines in the NFL. That's something we learn this week and every week in the National Football League. Next thing we learned is this is a weird season. It's a season where a lot of teams are kind of facing uncertainty as it pertains to COVID. There's different travel protocols in place. You obviously can't go out and get a normal meal in the cities in which you're playing when you're on the road. And what does all of this mean? It means that you're in a spot where you're going to have a lot of teams either going through the motions or just not playing with the ferocity, with the intensity that they would normally play with on a week by week basis. We saw this a few times here in week 4. We saw it with the Chiefs. The first half, they completely sleptwalked through it against the New England Patriots. They end up getting the win. They have a decent second half. But again, they completely sleepwalked through the first half. You have the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, they looked outright disinterested in their game against the Giants, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and give the Giants some credit for playing some decent defense throughout the year. But the Rams looked completely like, listen, we just want to get out of here and go home because we're actually near home right now. You saw them go through the motions. Tampa did the same thing on defense for a lot of the game. Again, just teams not playing with the same intensity you would normally see on a week-to-week basis. Justin Herbert looked like one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. You're going to see that sometimes this season, just with how weird everything is going on around the game of football. It's worth keeping in mind. It's worth looking ahead to try and find spots where teams are going to be sharper than their opponents. So we're going to talk about one of those spots at the very end of the show and our early action segment. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Elsewhere in the NFL, we learned some of these COVID losses are going to matter this season. The most high-profile example, of course, is Cam Newton for the New England Patriots. Massive downgrade going from him to Brian Hoyer to eventually Jarrett Stidham. I get it. But you got to look beyond just the big names when it comes to this stuff. And right now, the most prominent example would be the Tennessee Titans. 20 total members of the team, the organization, whether it be players or staff, tested positive. Of course, we don't know how many players, which players, they were, things like that. But it's worth keeping an eye out for teams that already struggle with depth. And if they have a situation like this, how is that going to affect them? It hasn't bitten any team too badly yet outside of New England, but it certainly can as the Titans start playing games again, probably by Sunday. It's something to keep in mind as you get ready to make the next week of picks. You might not be looking at the same Tennessee Titans team that started the season 3-0. You're going to have to keep an eye on it as the weeks progress. Finally, what we learned in week 4 is something that we knew from the previous weeks this season, but boy, it was really driven home in week 4. The Dallas Cowboys defense is just an absolute tire fire, folks. That thing is wretched for that Cowboys team. 1 point shy of giving up a 50-burger to the Cleveland Browns in week 4 at home, no less. Team is allowing over 35 points a game through their first 4 games. And you wonder, they get rid of Jason Garrett, they bring in Mike McCarthy, and you're in a position now where the Cowboys are on the verge of wasting an MVP season from Dak Prescott because they can't stop anybody. Teams 1-3, of course, still in the mix in the NFC East, the worst division maybe in the history of football when all is said and done this season. But if you're the Cowboys, you have to be so concerned. And if you're a bettor, I guess either take the over or pass on Cowboys games, but you can expect those totals to start creeping higher and higher with this Cowboys team, even though they started the season with the highest totals in the NFL in the 50s in week 1. You can expect those numbers. I wouldn't be surprised if we see numbers getting closer and closer to 60 with this Cowboys team because of how bad they have been on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, there are plenty of opportunities for them to remedy that situation. They're going to play the Giants twice. They're going to play the Eagles twice. They're going to play the Washington football team twice. 3 of the worst defenses in the NFL, making up 6 of their remaining 12 games. So that bodes well for them. But you have to be concerned right now, not just if you're a Cowboys fan, but if you're an NFL bettor, because this is a team that you think should go out there and dominate every week. But so far, that has not been the case thanks to their leaky defense. Marco checking in. NFC East is a joke. Cowboys will still win the division. We'll talk about the futures odds in the NFC East in every division in a little bit. But spoiler alert, I do agree with Marco on this one. as the Cowboys, despite their problems, much better than the other terrible options that exist throughout the NFC East. So that's what we learned in week 4. Now, for a more introspective look at week 4, we're going to play a game of Upon Further Review, where we look back at my picks for the week 4 slate. And we had some mixed reviews, folks. We went 2-2-1, so you lose a little bit on the VIG. For the 2020 season, 13-7-2. For those of you scoring at home, that is a 65% win rate. We'll certainly take it for as long as that is the case. I wouldn't anticipate that being the case for much longer, just from a statistical point of view, but we'll take what we can get for now. We'll start Upon Further Review like we do every week. We'll talk about where I was wrong, and we had 2 games where that was the case. We'll start with the Detroit Lions, and my first mistake was trusting the Detroit Lions, ladies and gentlemen. Not a good idea, but I did it. I took them +4 against the spread against the New Orleans Saints at home, and things were looking great in the first quarter, folks. Things were just chipper. Things were spectacular. Up 14-0 in the first quarter. Breeze is throwing interceptions. The team is looking out of sorts offensively. We're the Saints. And then it all just completely disintegrated. 35 points there for the Saints. Things were pretty easy for them from that second possession on. And the Lions just kind of stopped scoring. They put up some points late. They made it a 6-point contest, but by then it was too little too late. And of course, the Lions end up being our first loser of the week. Another loss in the early window. It was a pick I gave out last Tuesday in our early action segment. It was the Arizona Cardinals, -3.5 against the Carolina Panthers. The Cardinals, they just got blown off the field. I mean, I guess that was just a bad read on my part. Young team, body clock game. I thought Kyler Murray would be able to feast off of that weak Carolina defense. That was not the case. Carolina actually played pretty admirably defensively for the bulk of that game. And Teddy Bridgewater, again, mistake-free football, did a nice job of just managing that offense, keeping it on schedule. And that's what Teddy Bridgewater is. I thought, and I said it on the show last week, that him only having thrown 2 touchdown passes to that point in the season was going to be a problem against an explosive Arizona offense. It wasn't. He could have gotten away with, well, I guess continuing to not throw touchdowns because Arizona wasn't doing a lot of scoring, at least early on in the formative portions of that game. So that's where I was wrong. We had a push. It came in the form of the under in the Bills-Raiders game. I had under 53. Game landed on exactly 53 points. Really could have went either way. You had a missed extra point by the Bills that could have affected things. You also had in the fourth quarter on 4th down, Nelson Aguilar mossing a guy in the end zone with just a couple of minutes left. If that pass falls incomplete, the way that most throws to Nelson Aguilar do, you end up with a pretty easy under. So could have went either way. Settle for the push, not a big deal. Now, to my favorite part of the show each week, on a Tuesday, Upon Further Review, we're going to talk about where I was right. And there's nothing I like doing more than talking about me being correct. We'll start with the Seahawks. Laid 6 with Seattle in Miami against the Dolphins. And that line continued to drop, actually, from Thursday on. It got down to about 5 before kickoff. A lot of people jumping on the Dolphins in that contest. And it was pretty tight for the most part. But at the end of the day, the explosive playability of Russell Wilson compared to that of Ryan Fitzpatrick, it ended up making the difference. Tight game late. Wilson throws a deep ball touchdown into the corner of the end zone. And then Fitzpatrick throws a pick trying to answer right back. And you have a situation where Seattle is able to get a pretty comfortable win at the end of the day. Also correct about the Baltimore football team matchup. I had the over 45, and it got there toward the end of the game. I mean, you had some chances for it to go over. Before that, there was a late turnover by the Ravens deep into Washington territory. And at the end of the day, thought, okay, maybe this might cost us that over. But late in garbage time, Baltimore brings in Robert Griffin III. He throws a pick. Washington, couple of plays, they're into the end zone. And I'm celebrating a nice little over in the early window. So that is a look back at where I was right and where I was wrong in week 4. Again, 2-2-1 for the week, so a slight loss on the VIG. And for the season, 13-7-2. And we will update this total throughout the season here on the GBI show. But I'd say so far, you might want to pay attention to our picks each week because they're not going too badly. We'll try and keep it going that way. Of course, helping me make those amazing NFL picks, the data you can find at betql.co. Over 10,000 simulations on each NFL game. They give you score projections, let you know where the game is going to land from their projections. You can compare that to the spread. You can compare it to the total, find value in both of those markets. You can track line movements on everything. Spread, total, first half, second half, all that fun stuff at betql.co. Use promo code SANIN, SANIN, at the bottom of your screen. Get 20% off all subscriptions to the data you can find at betql.co. Now, every Tuesday, we do something a little different. Last week, we did our NFL power ratings. We gave you the top 10, which not a lot of changes because those top 10 teams continued to roll for the most part, with the exception of the COVID-afflicted Cam Newton and the New England Patriots. This week, we're going to look at the futures market all preseason long. We did division by division previews across the NFL, gave you the futures markets, gave you some picks in those areas. We're going to revisit really quick some of these futures markets as they have been updated through week 4 of the season. These numbers coming from DraftKings Sportsbook earlier today. And we'll start with the updated odds to win the Super Bowl. Kansas City, still the favorites, plus 350 to win it all. Baltimore comes in at 6-1. The Seattle Seahawks up to 8-1 odds now to win the Super Bowl. They were much more of a generous payout if you got them preseason. They were one of the teams that I thought had a real shot at it in the preseason. Of course, we'll talk more about the Seahawks in just a little bit. Packers 10-1. New Orleans and Tampa Bay both 14-1. And the Buffalo Bills, the undefeated Buffalo Bills, come in at 15-1 odds. Now, with the Super Bowl lines being what they are, as I just mentioned them, I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, Baltimore, completely overvalued at 6-1. How many times do we have to see Lamar Jackson fail in big spots before we say, you know what, 6-1 is not nearly enough for me to consider them? To me, I'd line them closer to 10-1. I get it. You probably have some liability on Baltimore based on the public backing Lamar Jackson. But to me, cannot justify pulling the trigger on the Ravens based on what we've seen from their quarterback in big games. I'll tell you who I like here. I like the NFC teams at the longer odds as opposed to taking Kansas City at plus 350. Specifically, I like Green Bay at 10-1. It's very clear Aaron Rodgers is on top of his game this season so far, and he's doing it in crowd environments that are reduced, which means he can use his snap count. He can use his cadence to manipulate defenses in a way that most other quarterbacks could not dream of doing. I think that below the Packers, you have, Tampa Bay and New Orleans. I think both of their quarterbacks a little washed up. And before you start chirping me about how Tom Brady threw 5 touchdown passes, listen, he did it at home in warm weather against a team traveling from the West Coast. A team, by the way, that hasn't been good this season at all in the Chargers. I thought at 8-1, they were worth a look to win the AFC West before the season. I was wrong about the Chargers. So don't chirp me about Tom Brady. He threw a pick 6 in that game too. He's had 4 pick 6s in his last 6 weeks. I'm still riding with the fact that he's a little washed. So don't like those NFC South teams. As much as I would love to pull the trigger on Buffalo at 15-1, first of all, there was way more value in the preseason. And secondly, reckless Josh Allen in the playoffs is something I could see coming out once again. So I don't fully buy them either. But those are your updated Super Bowl odds. Again, Chiefs plus 350, the favorites. Baltimore behind them 6-1, Seattle 8-1, and Green Bay at 10-1. Now, quick look at the divisions across the rest of the NFL. And we'll start with the NFC North. Green Bay running away with it, minus 335 in the updated odds to win that division. They have a 1-game lead over the 3-1 Chicago Bears. Of course, the Bears very lucky to be 3-1. They needed 2 miraculous comebacks, one against the Falcons, one against the Lions, and everybody else is way back there, 3 games behind the Green Bay Packers. That includes the Minnesota Vikings. NFC West, best division in football, and it's a very interesting one from a futures point of view. Seattle, the favorites to win it at minus 143 as of this afternoon. LA Rams, plus 350 right behind them. San Francisco, 5-1. Arizona, 7-1. Of course, confidence in them shaken based off the fact that they played so poorly against Carolina just last week. I think this is a spot where you might want to look at the Rams to win this division, especially if you took the Seahawks at plus money to start the regular season, like I had recommended in our NFC West preview show. The Rams just one game back of the Seahawks, and these are teams that have played pretty close games and they're head to head. I think there might be some value at plus 350 on a Rams team that they've looked a little shaky, but they have taken care of business for the most part. Could be 4-0 if not for their brutal travel schedule and the fact that they just fell short in their comeback attempt against the Buffalo Bills in week 3. NFC East, again, worst division in football, but that doesn't mean there's not potential to make some money there. Dallas, still the favorites, but barely. Minus 115. Philadelphia Eagles plus 130. Before the season, instead of taking the Cowboys to win the division, we took instead at plus money, I think it was plus 121, the Philadelphia Eagles to finish second. So this is an opportunity now. Lock in the Eagles at plus 130. That way, no matter which spot they finish in the division, first or second, you're going to make some money because, again, Washington football team and the New York Giants, regardless of what the standings say right now, they will be the bottom two teams in that division. Now we'll look at the NFC South, our final division in the NFC. You have Tampa Bay and New Orleans. Tampa minus 106 as of this afternoon on DraftKings Sportsbook to win that division. New Orleans plus 105. Tough to make heads or tails of this one. Tampa Bay 3-1, a game up on both the Panthers and the Saints. I guess if you have to take one, I would take New Orleans at the plus price just because I think once they get Michael Thomas back, that offense is going to be a lot more impressive than what Tampa Bay has put together so far. And again, you have the dome advantage. Fans maybe start trickling back into the building, something that could work out in the Saints' favor, but tough to predict either way. We had the Saints before the season. I would stick with them even at this point in the campaign. AFC North. Baltimore now minus 190 to win this division. Pittsburgh plus 250. Steelers half a game up in this division right now, 3-0. Baltimore 3-1. Of course, the Steelers had their bye week based off of the fact that they had to cancel their game against the Titans due to the Titans' COVID outbreak. We had before the season Pittsburgh at 3-1 odds to win the division. I see no reason to stop sticking with them. Yes, it's possible that they get a little fatigued toward the end of the year, having now a week 4 bye week, but I do like our position on the Steelers. Not enough value in the Ravens at minus 190 to hedge out, so we're going to ride with it. We're going to stick with the Steelers. Now, the AFC West, apparently you have some offshore sites already grading this one. I heard today that one of them said, you know what, we're going to pay out the Chiefs because we've seen enough. And whether your book on the legal side does that or not, doesn't matter because the Chiefs are running away with this division. They are now minus over 3,300 to win the AFC West, and there is not a team in that division that can catch them. 2 games behind are the Las Vegas Raiders, and that's not going to change anytime soon. This Chiefs team is just incredible, and it will stay that way for the foreseeable future. AFC East, the Bills have gained some traction, ladies and gentlemen. It was a tight race between them and the Patriots at the start of the season. You saw minus 110s, minus 120s on each side heading into the year. Bills now minus 280 to win the division. Patriots plus 200. Again, we had the Bills before the season. We had their season win total over, and no reason to change our position here. The Bills 2 games up on the Patriots for first place in the AFC East. And you also now have the situation where Josh Allen is playing like an MVP candidate. We'll talk about him in just a minute. And Cam Newton is dealing with COVID-19. Some good news, of course, for Cam Newton. He's said to be asymptomatic, so they're going to keep an eye on him. He is possibly going to return on Sunday, which you'll love to see regardless of what positions you have in these markets, just because he's such a fun player to watch. And you love seeing everybody come back healthy from this virus, of course, as well. But right now, the Buffalo Bills in an immaculate position if you took them preseason like we did here on the GBI show. AFC South, to round out our divisions here, tight race between two teams. Indianapolis minus 112, Tennessee at even money to win the AFC South. We took the Titans at plus money before the season. Titans half game up on the Colts right now at 3-0. Indy at 3-1. Of course, the Titans will have a makeup game later in the season against the Steelers, but you have to like the way the Titans have come out. No reason to hedge yet. Maybe you wait a little longer, you get the Colts at a nice plus price. But for now, riding with the Titans still to win that division. Quick look at a couple of awards. MVP. Before the season, in our NFC West preview show, we said Russell Wilson, 8-1, worth a shot at MVP because of how much the Seahawks depend on him to make plays, extend plays, and go deep down the field. Well, now he is the clear frontrunner to win that award at plus 175. So if you listen to me on the GBI show, you're in a great spot in the MVP market. Mahomes plus 300, Aaron Rodgers plus 300, a couple quarterbacks a little further back, Josh Allen, who we just mentioned a little while ago with the Bills, plus 1,100, and Lamar Jackson at 14-1 odds to win the MVP. This is Russ's award to lose. If you wanted to go a different direction, I really can't advise it because right now you're not getting enough of a plus price on Rodgers and Mahomes. And Josh Allen, again, you would need a spectacular season from the Bills for the voters to give him enough shine to win the MVP award. I don't think that's going to happen. But again, if you listen to me, 8-1 on Russ, you're a happy guy or girl. Sports betting, not a gendered industry, of course. MVP. Now let's go to the offensive rookie of the year. And I guess this is something that was bound to happen. Joe Burrow, minus 110, the clear favorite to win this award. Clyde Edwards-Helaire sitting at plus 250, the only other player anywhere close to Burrow for this award. And this is a tough one because Joe Burrow has not been great so far this year. He played pretty well against Jacksonville, finally got his yards per attempt up against a lackluster defense in the Jags. But other than that, he really hasn't been anything special. But he's got the most usage out of any rookie right now, and so he's likely to win the award unless Jerry Jeudy can turn chicken bleep into chicken salad with that Denver Broncos quarterback situation and put up some big numbers. I don't see that happening, and Edwards-Helaire just has not had the production to justify winning the award. Only one rushing touchdown for Clyde Edwards-Helaire so far. He got it in week 1. Of course, I was very high on him getting over 7.5 rushing touchdowns. That might be a bit of a sweat here in the final 12 games for the Chiefs. But again, Joe Burrow clearly the favorite to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. So that's a look at the updated futures markets in the NFL. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The segment we call Early Action on Tuesday. We find one early spot that we like. We try and get it before a line move takes place. And this week, we like the Houston Texans minus 6 against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jay, the Texans minus 6, they haven't won a game all season. Huge emotional boost getting rid of Bill O'Brien for the Texans. That coaching situation was toxic in Houston. All the personnel decisions he's made over the years, all the bad decisions he's made from a game management perspective, now gone. Texans now going to be led in the interim by Romeo Crennel, a very respected voice in the NFL from a coaching perspective. Again, not a great coach, but by not being Bill O'Brien, the Texans, I think, see a huge emotional lift in this game. By the way, it doesn't hurt that they're taking on a Jaguars team, I should say, that is abysmal defensively on the road, giving up 33 points in each of their first 2 road games this season. First one against the Tennessee Titans, and the second one coming just last week in Cincinnati against a rookie quarterback in Joe Burrow, who again has not been good for the rest of the year, and the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Deshaun Watson has a big game. He's got Will Fuller healthy still. I think the Texans put up some big numbers, and they celebrate losing Bill O'Brien once and for all with a big win over a division rival to get into the win column in the 2020 season. So that's our early action. And that, folks, is the GBI show for this Tuesday. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. Of course, again, betql.co for all your NFL betting data needs. Until Thursday, when, by the way, we unleash some more fantastic NFL picks. Until then, good luck with your bets. Good luck with what could be the last few minutes of the WNBA season, as the Seattle Storm might have a sweep on their hands against the Las Vegas Aces. Enjoy the NBA Finals. And of course, we'll see you before Thursday Night Football. Till then, good luck with your bets.